Wentworth.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Many members speak about how rewarding it is to help constituents who are struggling with some issue of government administration, managing an NDIS plan, resolving a dispute over Centrelink payments, or ensuring that passports and visas are processed. It is deeply rewarding to be able to help people and solve a problem that is causing them stress and strain. But I find it also deeply frustrating. It is frustrating that our government has so many issues and so few opportunities for resolution that constituents have to come to their local MP to be the hero. It's frustrating that government agencies aren't responsive to these issues or accountable to their shortcomings. And it's frustrating when these agencies create special workarounds, like hotlines for MPs, rather than fixing the underlying problem so that every person who applies to them can get the answer that they need in the timeframe that is reasonable. Good government isn't just about leaders being honest, public money being used soundly and donations being transparent. It's also about agencies, it's about the mechanisms of government being responsive to the people they serve and accountable when they fall short of expectations, and having a pursuit of excellence to make sure that Australians get the services they deserve. The ACCC is a prime example. When it comes to competition complaints, they're supposed to complete an initial investigation within 3 months. Their performance target is to do that 60% of the time, which seems a relatively low bar. But last financial year, only 34% of those investigations were completed on time. Their performance in the previous year wasn't much better. In-depth investigations are supposed to be completed in 12 months. Their target is to do that 70% of the time, but they only managed to do that for 42% of complaints. So we have a regulator with seemingly lenient targets who is nonetheless failing to meet this. And if the targets are wrong, let's talk about this, but these are their own targets and they're consistently failing on them. And what is the government's response? As far as I can tell, there's no additional resourcing, there's no internal process change, and there's no executives leaving for underperformance or really focus on this performance. Instead, I feel the government is taking the easy way out. Create a workaround, a special pathway for certain consumer groups to make complaints that will supposedly be fast-tracked. It's a pretty underwhelming response, and I think one that lacks genuine accountability. Because ACCC underperformance, it isn't just a passing frustration. These complaints are often made by small businesses who have experienced some sort of misconduct, and they don't have other practical forms of recourse. I talked earlier about the ACCC's performance guidelines, 3 months and 12 months being some of the guidelines. If you're a business and if this issue and competition is fundamentally affecting your business's chance of survival, you don't have 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to get that sorted out and to hope you are going to get a response, because the issue ahead of you might be absolutely fundamental. And what are your other recourses? You can go to the federal court, which is in itself expensive and slow. As an example, I've been shared with a franchisor who was mistreated by and sought to sue the franchisee. The franchisee then said, OK, they sought a court order that required the small business to show that it could pay $1 million worth of costs if it lost. The action was discontinued and justice was denied, and the misconduct lives on. And frankly, I don't think this piece of legislation does anything to address this, and I don't think there is an agenda fundamentally to address these issues. 1.5 million people own a small business in Australia. Many experience misconduct, but the majority don't take it to the ACCC because they don't have the confidence it'll lead to a useful resolution. And it is one reason why small businesses feel disconnected and not supported by this government and previous governments. I do believe many businesses welcome the change of government, particularly in relation to climate action and having a stronger, more stable investment framework for climate action, and they were hoping for reforms. But I don't think that at this stage the government has a proper agenda to make this place the best place in the world to grow and start a business. And if it doesn't have that agenda, then it is not looking after the long-term prosperity of this nation. It is a government that in various instances has piled on additional regulations, but hasn't done the other side of the work, which should be to ease the regulatory burden, or at least make sure that government services are there to support businesses when they need support. And let's take industrial relations. Businesses were working and turned up to the Jobs and Skills Summit to try and work with government and the unions and other players to come up with priorities that would fit the needs across the community and to provide a pathway for high pay for workers, more security and opportunity for casuals, and to better support those experiencing domestic violence. But I don't think the government came the other side in terms of engaging with business to find solutions that worked for them. Instead, the government proposed sweeping reforms that were going to be costly to implement, difficult to administer, and doesn't provide long-term growth in wages or conditions. And frankly, these conditions and the legislation, if you talk to a small business owner, they're just not across it because this is complex, it's not their day job. But again, government does not have a perspective of how do we make this workable in the real world. And I don't think the government has offered trade-offs where it said, OK, we'll give you, we'll ask you to do something, it will be difficult on this side, but let us give you something that's actually going to make a real difference on the other. And I would say awards are a prime example of this, and I have had this conversation time and time again with the Minister for Industrial Relations. The awards are complex, unworkable instruments that create confusion and division. A young person cannot pick up the retail award, which I think goes to over 70 pages, to work out how much they should be paid. Why not? That is what should be a fundamental requirement, that it is understandable with someone who is not an employment lawyer. But that does not happen. Award simplification could make a huge difference, enabling productivity gains, wage gains and job creation. It could help avoid the wage theft issues which have plagued all the so many businesses across the country. And while I absolutely abhor those people who seek to deliberately underpay wages of their workers, it is absolutely ironic to see government agencies or agencies funded by government, such as universities, the ABC, and the government's own Department of Industrial Relations of Workplace, be caught with as underpaying their own wages because of complexity of the awards. It is written in black and white, it is a problem, but the government is not doing this because it does not have an agenda about how to make it easier for businesses to run and build businesses in this country. I think the government does talk, a big talk when it comes to growth, business, investment and productivity. But in many areas, it does not match the walk just doesn't match the talk. And I do want to call out, there are some areas where I feel the government has moved forward. I think some of the migration reform to make it simpler. I think some of the work they're doing in trade is also important, and investment in education. Those are really important in terms of driving productivity. I want to give credit for where credit's due, and also the work on competition. All those things can help drive productivity, but they are not enough. And the government is missing in action on some of the most important drivers of productivity, including tax reform, including industrial relations reform through a productivity lens, but also just in the fundamentals of how to make it easier to start and grow a business in Australia. And I don't think it's making enough effort, for the thousands of businesses struggling with interest rate rises, surging import costs and a labour shortage. In fairness to the government, I don't think the previous government was doing a much better job. I feel there's a movement across this place to have a go at business and to take pot shots. And I, like anybody in this country, believe that business needs to behave in an ethical manner and needs to both look after its customers, its suppliers and its people. But I think there's this rhetoric at the moment where it's easy to blame business, but it is not. But government is not on side in terms of actually making a difference to make it easier for business. So I have two questions and two challenges I want to put to the Parliament and to the government of the day, but actually to the whole Parliament. And this is that I think we need two different visions in this country to the ones that we have. And firstly, we need a vision around what it takes for Australia to be the best place to build and grow a business. And because if we don't have that, our prosperity is not assured. And the second question I have is, I want a vision of a government which is genuinely there to serve the community and has an attitude of accountability for its service. Let me start with the first piece. Australia's we talk a lot of productivity in this place. And why do we talk about it? Because productivity growth is the only sustainable source of wage growth in this, that we have. So if we're not growing productivity, we will not grow real wages. If we don't grow our business sector, many people in this place, I think, treat business like, they are, constantly doing the wrong thing. If we do not have a business sector that is growing and thriving, we cannot pay for any public service that other people are passionate about. Australia's prosperity, and we are an incredibly prosperous country, is built on the success of our businesses. But that prosperity is not assured into the future. I am concerned about falling foreign investment rates. I am concerned about our productivity lagging. I am concerned about the fact that we're not investing in research and development as we should be to stay on the curve. And I'm concerned when I talk to small and growing businesses in this country who tell me that government is the hardest customer to deal with, that they do not find, do not get backing even to be from a procurement end. And at the same time, government is constantly providing barriers and obligations to them without having an agenda to make their lives easier. So, my question and the vision I am seeking is that that this is the best place to start and grow businesses in this country, that this is the most attractive place for other countries to invest, because we should be trying to attract foreign capital in. Because if we do this well, we have the greatest opportunity to provide wonderful jobs and growth and prosperity that underline this country and have built the success of this country to date. The second vision I am seeking from this government and previous governments, and that I believe this House should be focused on, is how to make government truly accountable and truly serving the community and adopting an attitude of service, one that is engaged with those it serves and responsive to the concerns and their challenges. When I look across the country and say, where do we have this? I see this in Services New South Wales, which is one of the best government agencies in the country, if not the world, because it is run with the customer, who is the citizen, in mind. It has identified what the customer, which is the citizen, is looking for from government services, and it does its best in terms of it adapts the best from the private sector, the best from around the world, to provide excellence in service. It is accountable to its performance metrics, and that is absolutely critical. Its mission is to provide excellent service and quality at optimal cost. And anyone who dealt with Service New South Wales truly delivers on this mission and understands why it is so highly regarded. I was speaking yesterday to Richard White, who's the founder of WiseTech, one of the great Australian tech stories and an incredibly successful company. And he talked to me, we were talking about government services, and he said, Services New South Wales, they have been transformational. And so we know we can do it. We know that we can actually provide government services that truly exceed expectations, but we do not pursue that across enough areas. And I think the ACCC is one where I feel like we need to make sure that the ACCC knows that its job is to be responsive to the citizens and small businesses that rely on its work to make sure that they get justice in terms of the issues that affect them. So I believe that good government is about genuinely dealing with the problems that people and businesses are facing. It's about being accountable and responsive. And I am supporting this bill, not because I particularly love this workaround, and I see this particularly as a workaround. I'm supporting this because it will help consumers and businesses. But I think that this is a symptom, actually, of the problems in government and the lack of accountability, rather than anything that should be applauded. We need to rethink this so that everybody who has an issue with the ACCC can get justice and at least a response, rather than just those people who get a fast track to work around the problems that the agency has. Thank you.